The ANC will scrap its January 8 celebrations countrywide. The party says national officials received a briefing this morning from Health Minister Zweli Mkhize and are concerned with the rapid proliferation of infections countrywide. The prognosis is not good. Politics editor Sbungalwa joins me now. Sbu, thank you so much for your time. Now, obviously, this decision by the ANC made soon after the Minister of Health briefed members of the ANC. What did he have to say?
Well, I think it probably was not. It probably was easy for the ANC to decide on this one because the picture over the past 24 and 48 hours has actually been very grim. On Saturday, we saw 10,000 new cases being reported. Overnight, Saturday, Sunday. In fact, yesterday they reported that there were 9,000 cases. So as they went into that meeting, actually, they've just released a statement now which details what the officials were briefed on. And what we hear from that statement is that Minister Mkhize actually told ANC officials that cases are now rising rapidly in all the 8 provinces, with the exception of the Northern Cape. Now, if you look at what happened during the so-called first wave, is that you had the high infections concentrated in specific areas, like your Gauteng, Western Cape, Eastern Cape, which we were seeing infections once again. But areas like Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northern Cape had lower cases. But now you can imagine, because it's the holiday period and all those people are concentrated in these urban centers, which have areas that have been identified as hotspots, are now going home because now we don't have a hard lockdown like before. So those numbers, which is what is pushing some of those numbers higher.
Of course, this decision also made at the back of South Africa being in its second wave, and some countries, across the globe also being in their second wave. Also after the back that there is now a second variant of COVID-19. Obviously, this is telling us that government is taking this seriously. The ANC is taking it seriously. How worried should we be as South Africans?
Look, the ANC actually took a very responsible decision. Because when the Secretary General of the ANC briefed the media about a week ago, the question was asked as to why the ANC is holding a live event when we are in the middle of a second wave, and the response at that time was that they would look into some kind of a hybrid system, as did the DA when they had their National Congress, and also when they had their National Congress, where you had some people available at a live venue and others joining virtually. So the ANC had planned to have 100 people attending at the main event in Gampatlele, and then 100 people attending in each of the 9 provinces, while others would join virtually, but they've decided to scrap that. So the thing is that if you listened to the briefing by the Health Minister, where he was joined by scientists, it actually makes sense because not only do we have a new variant of the virus, but also it's in the speed at which the infections are rising. But now a new trend, which is about how it seems to be affecting young people whom generally would, some of them not show any symptoms, but this time around they're reporting that even younger people who are, I would say, generally healthy are reporting severe illness. So, which is something that they're still to grapple with. So it perhaps makes sense that the ANC would take such a decision. I guess perhaps because the ANC is the governing party as well, it is important that they do what they say.
Now, you said that the ANC has taken a responsible decision, and one would tend to agree, but they had indicated, as you've said, that they were going to still have this event, even though they knew we were experiencing a second wave. But it perhaps speaks to the importance and the significance of the January 8 event, especially because we are going into this election next year.
Obviously, politics are about the spectacle, is about optics. And in the previous years, the ANC has used the January 8 statement events as signature events, which are not only about a show of force, but it's also the main message of the ANC. It's what I would call its marching orders to their members in terms of their program for the year. That's what it is about. And in election years, we've seen them having bigger events. I mean, I recall in 2009, just after Zuma took over in Polokwane, they had a major event in East London, I think, where they had 2 stadiums that they filled up in that town. And also there was a year where they filled up FNB, with about 90,000 people attending, from what I recall. So it being an election year, all things being, had we not had COVID, obviously they would have done the same. But I think the importance of January 8, as I said, for the ANC is that not only is January 8 the birthday of the ANC, having been formed in 1912 on the day, but the ANC uses the day to kind of spell out its plans for the year ahead. And most of the message that is contained in the January 8 is what we find. It finds expression in the State of the Nation address, which is delivered by the president a month later. But I think this time around, the president, in fact, I don't think that's what the ANC has confirmed. The president this time around will read out a statement which will be played, beamed, and probably on broadcast channels and virtually, but there will be a virtual National Executive Committee meeting of the ANC to finalize the message that will be delivered by the president.
Now, if one had to take a very cynical view about this event in particular, because it was almost as if it was doomed not to happen, with in the Free State, we heard from Ace Magashule, who preempted that the event would happen in the Free State, and then obviously the ANC announced that it would happen in Limpopo, and now to have this event, to have this event now indefinitely, cancelled and not happening. What does it tell us about the optics and the internal affairs that are happening within that party?
Look, if you believe in, if you're superstitious, you'd probably think there's something to that. But I think on this one, insofar as the announcement by Ace Magashule that it would be held initially where he said that it would be held in the Free State, I think he had jumped the gun there, and it was more his wishes rather than the wishes of the NEC. But I think the NEC also wanted to stamp its authority in that it makes the final decision as to where the event takes place. But the reality is that now it doesn't matter where you are in the country, they will still, members of the ANC and those who are interested in the program of the ruling party will still be able to at least join in and listen on the message. The main thing here being about the cancellation of a live event, because you can imagine every time you hear the health minister telling people not to gather. So it doesn't matter whether you're 10 or 15. If you're gathering in close proximity, the reality is that there's a large chance of transmission.
Now, very quickly, Sbu, before I let you go, just something maybe a little bit off politics, but also has some significance, especially because of what the minister has now advised the ruling party, is that with all of these provinces that we're hearing, especially those hotspots, provinces, the Western Cape, even though it's now, also probably in the top 2 of the provinces that are hotspots, it still continues to enjoy its beaches being opened, and a lot of the restrictions that have been imposed on KZN and the Eastern Cape, for instance, not imposed in the Western Cape. What is the latest there, and what can we make of this treatment of the Western Cape?
Look, that has been subject of great debate among South Africans as to why close the beaches in the entire Eastern Cape. Yes, we know that the Eastern Cape government had requested that, and that the government of KZN had asked that the so-called busy days be the days where the beaches are closed, but that in the Western Cape the government did not want that. But I think the big problem here for the National Command Council as the president is where, it's fine to have a listening government, but I think there needs to be consistency. If a place is a hotspot, it's a hotspot. If a beach is a place where you're likely to get more infections, then it makes sense to, if you want to close it in all other areas that are identified as such. Because here's the thing, during the peak of the first wave around July, the Western Cape, the highest number they recorded in terms of admissions to hospital was 1,800. But the Western Cape last week actually breached the 2,000 mark in terms of admission. So you still have the Western Cape with runaway infections, and you know that some hospitals in areas, actually like George, the George Regional Hospital and Knysna, those hospitals are already under pressure. In the Eastern Cape, we read over the weekend that they do not have more additional beds. So I think what we feared in the first wave would happen in terms of the pressure on public infrastructure, public and private infrastructure, is what we are seeing now. So the question then is, for how much longer will the decision to keep those public gatherings and public events, not just public events, but public places open? Because if you look at it, the point here is that you have people who are still going out and people are still behaving, as I would say, irresponsibly. So that doesn't help. And at the end of the day, you end up with the pressure that you have on the public health system. But more importantly, I think what also makes the government, central government, more hesitant at this point in time is that there is a pending court case. 2 court cases, one in the North Gauteng High Court brought by AfriForum, which is a surrogate of the Freedom Front Plus, I apologize. And then in the Western Cape, which is one that was brought by the DA, challenging the closure of the beaches in the Garden Route. So I think the national government, before they announce anything else, they probably would want to hear the outcomes of those court cases.
All right, so we appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Sibungalwa, politics editor.